Okay, I'm assuming Margaret's stuck in traffic, so we can begin the meeting. I see the lights on. So would you please read the roll, Robin?
Chair Bauer,
Here.
Vice Chair Corey,
Here.
Board Member Bernstein, Board Member Kohler, Board Member Makinen, Board Member Shepherd,
Here.
Board Member Wimmer, 4 present.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda or?
None.
Okay, and oral communications, I don't see anyone here besides Bo, who we're going to hear from in a moment. So we will move on to official reports, which is our schedule of meetings. I will now be available on June 27th should a meeting occur because my trip was canceled.
Can I ask a question about August 22nd? Is that trip of yours still on?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's still,
Well.
it is for now.
I can't say lucky you, but you know, maybe
It's
that's the
okay.
case. We do have an item targeted for that date, and we did have an item targeted for July 11th, which was going to be the. It's probably not going to go, I would say, is the cannery / Fry's historic resource evaluation.
That's going to go after that goes to planning, or?
Well, no, we do still plan to bring that to the HRB for discussion. It's just that some of these NVCAP meetings have been canceled, and there's other reasons why it's delayed.
Sure.
So
Okay.
that may push to September. So I don't know that we're going to have a meeting in July. I think it wouldn't be the end of the world, right? It's a nice month to take a break and a vacation.
Right.
You're going to be gone,
So,
yeah. So, I mean, I do have that Shepherd is gone for the second meeting of July.
I will be out the 8th of August if we have a meeting that day as well,
Okay, let's not have a meeting that day, since we're looking at the 22nd for, and I'll just say it here,
22nd,
that's the targeted date for the Castellea draft environmental impact report presentation to the Historic Resources Board. The night before, or the week before, it will be presented to the Planning and Transportation Commission, where folks will have, a night meeting to make all the comments, more of the comments, but here will be focused on the cultural resource chapter and the historic resource evaluation for that project. Okay. So did it?
So we can move to our study session. So I'd like to introduce Bo Crane, who is going to talk to us about the book that he's written called Ticket to Ride. Bo is a member of the Palo Alto Stanford Heritage Group. He's also a member of Palo Alto Historic Association. I think that's what PAHA stands for. I'm a board member with Bo in past, so intimately familiar with this. But Bo, please join us at the...
I probably have to,
Disclose.
yeah.
I can stand.
I should disclose that I live 2 doors from the speaker. Bo.
From Bo.
Yeah, just want to make sure, for the record, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, board, for having me. Thank you, Amy, for inviting me. I met with Amy in her office, and we talked about the book. It's actually called Ticket to Rock, which is a spin on Ticket to Ride. David has Ticket to Ride in mind because that's how I had that as a typo. It was supposed to be Ticket to Rock. We, the Palo Alto Stanford Heritage, of which I'm the secretary, we had a meeting. We were deciding what other historical things can we include in our organization other than just architecture, and we came up with people, with rock and roll people, and we were going to do a map of the homes of different rock players in Palo Alto. but they're so far scattered about, from North Palo Alto to South Palo Alto, too far for a walking tour. We're not about to have shuttle buses. So instead, we identified the homes, and we include a map of where they are if people wanted to tour them. And we had them listed house by house number. But then we thought that, should we contact the homeowners of these homes and let them know, Grace Slick lived in your house, Jerry Garcia lived in your house, something that may have been a surprise to them. And at that point, we thought, well, rather than put the burden on them to say yes or no, we identified the neighborhoods. When was the tract developed? A lot of these were Eichlers in the 50s. Coverly was developed in the 50s. We did identify one house, which was sold last year by De Leon Realty on 1012 High Street, and it's where Jerry Garcia picked the name Grateful Dead. It's 1012 High Street. It was advertised as the house where the Grateful Dead name was chosen. They have a plaque on the wall. The Grateful Dead had been the Warlocks. There's a plaque on the wall that says the Warlocks. As part of the advertising, you go on site. Amy, for a while, got a panicked look, then went through her notes and said, oh, it's right there in the disclosure. So my point in bringing all this up is that we're starting to get to where historic personages in people's memory are in people's memory, and these things may affect your decisions. The other big rock and roll star who I consider big is Grace Slick. She came here from Highland Park near Chicago. Her family moved into a house that was built in 1946. Older than 50 years, not very historic. It's on a block off of Channing. And when the time comes, if that house gets identified as people want to do something, it's a two-story, it's in good shape, that would probably undoubtedly be something for the board to consider, just like they included the fact that the Grateful Dead name choosing house was included in the information about that house. They did add a two-story to that house. The porch remains as it was back when the Grateful Dead name was chosen. The Warlocks were practicing on the porch, and Jerry Garcia went inside, found a dictionary, folklore dictionary, stuck his finger in on the Grateful Dead, and they became the Grateful Dead. So this is our booklet. There's several rock and rollers here. Again, it's about their neighborhoods, who they are, their biographies, and it's being marketed for sale now by the Palo Alto Stanford Heritage, otherwise known as PAST. So that's my talk. Any questions?
So we just go on the PAST website and we can order it? How do we buy it?
You can buy it through, you can contact the PAST site,
Okay.
P-A-S-T. It's $10. And we're going to get the marketing information out, but it'll be on the PAST website. We're getting this first one is pretty much sold out. I do have some with me today. The first issue was $5.
Okay,
If you like one,
definitely.
I will, David can
Right.
talk to you afterwards. He's a PAST member, and he can
Thank
he
you.
can show you his copy, and I'll get him back one.
So, Bo, are there plans to interpret some of this at the Palo Alto History Museum?
We may be occupying a space at the Palo Alto History Museum. I gave a talk at Palo Alto Historical Association on June 5th, as David mentioned. So they're also involved with this booklet, not in the publication, but in the presentation. And a lot of us are joint PAST and PAHA members. Anything else? Well, thank you for inviting me this morning, and good luck with the board. Thank you for serving.
Thanks, Bo. I know how hard you worked on this, and it is a really important treasure that we now have as part of our Palo Alto history. So I appreciate your doing that.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome. I'm happy to. I'm a native Palo Alton, and this was exciting for me as well.
That's right.
Thanks
Bo was a graduate of Palo High School.
Yeah, Walter Hayes, Jordan, Pally,
Yeah,
and then
Stanford.
across El Camino.
Right.
And I recently learned that Grace Slick went to Castellea.
Yeah, Grace Slick, she was a sophomore at Pally. She then transferred to Castellea. I haven't found the reason, but she transferred to Castellea. There's a picture of her yearbook photo from Castellea, and her younger brother was at Pally, a senior when I was a sophomore.
And I presume that if someone stumbles upon your, this presentation in some archive and has other musicians or people in the music business who we have not seen, that you'd welcome them contacting you to add.
Yeah, it's, everybody knows a lot about at least one person in here who's contacted me. There's people among us who have also toured Europe as musicians. I won't name any names, but there's, so people are connected one way or another with music.
Yeah. Okay, well, great. Thank you very much for,
Oh, you're
Spending
talking
time.
about bands? Is that what you're saying? Musical bands?
Yes, we have bands and individuals.
You didn't get my band in.
And Roger Kohler himself was,
no, we didn't include garage bands.
I played in a band for 10 years, yeah.
there's a lot of high school band.
Our favorite people who love the shows is how, see, my mind is not working. But we used to play at the,
There were a lot of rock and roll bands, and the Beatles came to the Cabana in 1965. That was a huge thing. I was here then. Roger was already playing music by then, so there were rock and roll bands, but the Beatles really set it off. Just to elaborate a little bit more, they had played at the Cow Palace. Ken Kesey and his group went to the Cow Palace. They were blown away by all the hoopla and the noise and the screaming, but he later had his own concerts called Acid Test. He knew Jerry Garcia from the days of Menlo Park, and he got Garcia's band to play at the Acid Test. So here you had the Beatles at the Cabana in '65, August, the Acid Test at the Big Beat, which was a nightclub near San Antonio and 101, in December. So you have the British invasion pop music, and then 4 months later and 2 miles away, you have the start of the psychedelic music era. So you had these clashes, and who went out? Well, the Beatles later went to Sgt. Pepper's, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. They were affected by what was happening in Palo Alto. And there's a lot in the book that, where I mentioned that there's no coincidence you have Palo Alto, Stanford, and Silicon Valley all at the same locale, and they all contributed to what we know as the world today.
yeah, it's the Association for the Retarded there on Middlefield Road. It's where we played for 10 years.
Every Friday night?
No, it was once or twice a month, but I remember they just thought we were the greatest. They kept yelling, "You're better than the Beatles," of which we were not.
If only you had Brian Epstein behind you.
Okay.
All right, thanks again.
Thanks, Bo.
Thanks, Amy.
All right, action items. This is, I think, going to be relatively straightforward. We need to approve the minutes from our meeting of April 25th. I would like to say that I thought the minutes, I think the transposition of these minutes has significantly improved. So I don't know what happened, but I read through them and I didn't find, any context issues that were wrong. So I'm praising whoever is doing this now. Good software. All right, any changes, deletions, or omissions in the minutes? I don't see anybody putting their hand up, so I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good, thank you. All right. So next item on our agenda is creation of a subcommittee for approval of finishes at 526 Waverly. And I see that the developer is here. just in time. So I think as background for this, in our packet, the terms of conditions for our prior approval for this project included bringing to the board the stucco texture, the tile selections, and the paint colors, which would be approved by a subcommittee and then approved by the full board on a consent item. Amy learned, 2 weeks ago or more, that the stucco was finished, the tile is set, and we had no submissions or approvals. The paint is not on, but that's an easy solution. So John Schenk, the developer, I think that's the appropriate way to describe your role. Owner, okay, John, is here, I presume, to talk about the, this item. So first, let's find the people who would be willing to do, serve in the subcommittee. I think it's, I'd like to be on it. I've already been out there and looked at it. We need 2 other people who are willing. Any 2 other people? Debbie? Okay. And okay, Roger. Okay, so it'll be Debbie, me, and Roger as the subcommittee. So John, if you want to join us and talk about what happened here.
Sure. Thank you very much. Yes, John Schenk, representing the Thwaites family, the owners of the property. Hi. Doggone. I think what happened here is a lapse of follow-through and attention to detail in terms of the approval conditions between, I think it's a collective dropping of the ball between myself and our architect, Randy Popp. Not that it helps, and if my kids started down this path, I would catch them quickly, but you give me a few minutes so I can pretend to be my kids without somebody boxing them in. I think in our zeal, we're so excited about this, and I don't know if you recall, there's a lot of excitement when we just got started with it and started sharing with Amy around, this will be so great, and finding the old plans and all this good stuff. We just started following this trail of information and old pictures and these sorts of things. And then Randy, to his credit, realized, uh-oh, we've gone a step too far, and reached out to Amy, and then with David, you guys started to figure out, okay, where are we? And we recognize that we didn't follow some of the prescriptive steps. We will do as you guys desire. Our request is that you form the subcommittee and come on out and take this. I can't bring it to you because it's on the building in terms of the tiles. The paint colors, even if they were up on the building, we could change them in wood. We have some samples on the building. I have brush outs of them and such, but I think it's best for the subcommittee to go and take a peek. Sure. We have spent an inordinate amount of time trying to get the plaster just right, over and over, and as you can imagine, going into a building that's as old as this one is, and all the old signs that have been on and off the building, and all these old things, every time you kind of move a layer in, you realize, whoop, now we've found an old patch, and we found a this and a that, and just the artisans who've been out there climbing around and smoothing and slightly adjusting the sand mix and all these things. It's part of the fun of it, but we're just hopeful that you all can come out and say, hey, yep, we love these paint colors, we like the tile. There is one point I'll make to all of you. Our contractor, with our approval, but we didn't give much thought to it, put in some tile on the ground plane at the entries. There's some of the entries that had, in our restoration part of this, they are now recessed back to their original design, so we were left with some mismatch of things on the ground, so we put some tile in there. It is, from our perspective, it is temporary. The sidewalk is a hodgepodge of patches and designs, et cetera. We've worked with Public Works. They're okay with us not addressing that now. Our intention is to move forward with a bigger scale project behind the historic part of the building. So this tile's there just to bridge between the subpar sidewalks and the level of the interiors. And it's not great. I think the ultimate design is that the sidewalk and its design, which to the degree Public Works buys off on it, would have kind of a cobblestone look to it, it would be a seamless finish to the front doors out to the sidewalk when we're all done. But that is another thing that was a call in the field. We don't think it's historic. We don't think it's fantastic, but it's serving a purpose.
So if I could, I don't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to ask Amy something about this. So it says in Randy's letter, which is part of our packet and is part of this hearing, that the replacement of the sidewalk, the staff agreed that it would be deferred until some future date. It's on page 39 of our packet, the paragraph right after the half page. It says, in discussion with planning staff, when the project conditions of approval were under development, we reached an agreement to replace the sidewalk, or the replacement of the sidewalk would be deferred. I just want to be sure that that's...
I was not part of that discussion. The planner, Holly, has left the city, so I can't ask her, but possibly she worked it out with Jody Gerhardt, the current planning manager. I can verify with her, but we know that this is the initial stage of restoring the building, and then an application. The intent is to move this to Category 2 from Category 3 because of the rehabilitation. That goes to council to put the seal of approval on that. That allows then a bonus area to put housing on the
back on the property.
on the second, make a second floor, or it has a second floor.
Third, right.
Third floor,
right.
at the back part of it. So that project would require replacement of sidewalk along the front, the curb gutter sidewalk.
Yeah, and if I could maybe add to that, it was really, as a part of that, I forget the people who were around in that, but the sidewalk being the city's property, it was really the Public Works Department that was that part of the negotiation. Planning staff acquiesced to Public Works. When it started out, Public Works said, replace everything, replace the utilities, redo half the street, this sort of thing. And then they realized this was really a historic restoration. So they backed, which was great. I think it's the right thing for the city to, in a way, help facilitate the historic restoration. And then if you want to do something to the building, add area, do something, then come the more typical conditions.
So I am confident you want to do this. I guess what makes me slightly uncomfortable is that in this particular project, we now have a material that is supposed to be temporary, but sadly, some temporary materials become permanent. And I guess I'm uncomfortable about the fact that we're being asked to basically close out this portion of your project with the understanding that something will happen in the future, which may or may not come back before the board. And so because this is a historic renovation, which will change categories, which is very significant.
Yes.
Glad that it's being done. But there's a disconnect between this surface, those little 1-inch tiles, which I find I have problems with them.
Fair.
Not being addressed until a future date, which may never occur. I mean, I can imagine a number of circumstances where it just doesn't happen. So I'm uncomfortable about that. That's why I was asking if there is a record of this. And I'm not sure that I have a solution at this moment, but I just want, it's a process thing here. So
and I
need to
think
figure this out.
And I respect, and if the decision is, hey, we're not okay with that. I know we didn't ask you, we'll pull those tiles out and we can put in some concrete so that it looks, on our property, right, which is where this tile exists now, and do some of the matching of the finish. As I recall, and I've been looking at this, the conditions, there isn't anything specific to that area. I don't think we'd really contemplated, well, what are we going to find when we push the wall back to its original position? There was a thought, oh, we'll find the original concrete underneath the old tiles that were, the interior tiles that were put on top. Well, we didn't. So we put something in.
Okay, so I'm just raising this because.
Very fair.
As a board and a city process, I don't think that it's a good idea to, to complete one section of a review without having all of the, the scope of that project be complete. So
Yes.
I'll maybe, Amy, you and I can talk about what the right process is. The subcommittee can go out there and look at this. Is that,
Yeah, so just to address one piece of what you said earlier, the project that would involve adding to a category 2, that is the goal, would in the downtown would absolutely come to the HRB for review. So they would be conditions that the HRB could weigh in on, certainly at that time. Regarding the subcommittee and figuring this out, if we could adjourn from here and go out this morning, we're all here. That was my hope that would be, and you're here. And
Turn the temperature down a little bit, so we're okay today.
Randy is not
He's out of
here.
town,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
So I know Roger and I can do that because Roger and I are in the same car. Debbie, do you have? Okay, good. So
Who's the driver?
I was hoping we would do that, so that's a good thing. And we can talk about it. I just want to make sure that the process here is consistent with other city work. And having built housing here and interacted with Public Works for 45 years, they never let us put anything off in the future. So we'll work this out some way, John, so that we can move forward and certainly encourage your project to move to the next phase.
and
Okay.
one thing I would just say, generally speaking, for conditions and modification to conditions, so for instance, packet page 45 are the Public Works, and 46 are the Public Works engineering conditions that talk about work in the right-of-way, saying the plans must clearly indicate any work proposed in the public right-of-way. This is not in the public right-of-way. This is on the
Right.
private property. So it gets a little squishy there and unclear.
I know.
So the Public Works doesn't actually need to modify their own condition in response to this because it's not in the public right-of-way.
No, I totally understand where,
Yeah.
the jurisdiction lies. And I don't want to prolong this conversation because I'd rather have the subcommittee bring this back to the full board, but it was my understanding Public Works does not like sidewalks that are not
They don't.
more conventional, and this is not conventional, and so maybe because this is an historic building, they have an exemption or some other method that allows them to do this, but I think that's a future discussion, so.
And I think you're right, and at that time, my hope is, I go to Public Works with your recommendation, your collective thought around, hey, it would be great if the sidewalk in this section were allowed to be finished the way that it used to be. Public Works is tough. They want flat, gray, smooth.
Yeah. And there are legitimate safety reasons
Absolutely.
for their standards. I'm not
Yep.
making any
No.
comment other than that. I'm aware that they have very precise standards. So any other board members have any comments? If not, we can, I guess we would, I think that's our entire meeting.
Yes, we're done. It's 9 o'clock, that's it.
So let's, the subcommittee will go out with you after we adjourn, and we'll proceed. I did want, I guess we're at board member questions, comments, and announcements. I wanted to say that Martin and Michael and I have created a list of historic materials that should be looked for in demolition of any buildings. And I forwarded it to you, and so I'm hoping that will get on to an agenda soon. And actually, I presume you've sent that to Phil Boble and asked him to look at that because it's really part of his initiative there. So we've made progress on that. We tried to get this done quickly so that it could be blended into the demolition proposal that Phil is bringing to the council. So anyone else have any comments or announcements? No?
I was
None
just,
from staff?
Oh, I was just going to say, Martin and I have been on the board a long time. And it's interesting that when we first came on board and all the things we did, and you weren't here and this and that, but it's pretty amazing that we're still functioning here and doing, and I think the board over all these years has had a pretty big impact, and it's been a good thing to have, and I think most citizens are glad that we're here, and because a lot of folks who are live in older homes and everything do like to are impressed that we are watching over things, is what I guess I'm trying to say. And we're kind of a subtle board, we don't have big names and things like that, but I just think it's been quite a long ride for me especially, but it's, I think we're important people in what goes on here in town, and I'm glad to have staff that's so good, so thank
Yeah.
you.
I'd second that. All right.
In turn, I will thank the board for your service. Thank you.
So our next board meeting might be August 22nd.
It's looking more like that. The reason to meet in July would be to, if you wanted to discuss these materials that you, or just approval of minutes from today, which, can wait till
Right.
August.
I think that these demolition materials should be piggybacked on some other program. It's not a large enough topic to warrant an independent.
No, I think the only reason we would meet July 11th would be if the cannery/fries site were to come forward. So I'm, kind of in the process of verifying this week about that to see if that's, possible.
So the one thing I'm thinking about in terms of the demolition materials is if for some reason that information would need to be part of the council process, which I think Phil's already submitted, then maybe we would want to have a brief meeting to talk about that. So I guess we'd let Phil
Okay.
advise on that.
All right, I'll reach out to Phil today.
Okay, all right. With that, I think we're adjourned. Thank you, and nice to see you. Enjoy the rest of the summer. Hope it's not as hot as last week.
Hope not.